The sea had never been Sarah's enemy. For 23 years, she had lived in the small coastal town of Harborview, where generations of her family had made their living as fishermen. The rhythms of the tides were as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. The ocean was provider, playground, and pathway all at once. But on that February morning, as rain lashed horizontally across the harbor and the sky melded with the sea in a single gray mass, Sarah looked out at the churning waters and felt something she rarely experienced: fear. "You can't go out there," her mother pleaded, clutching Sarah's arm as they stood on the doorstep of their weathered blue house overlooking the harbor. "The Weather Service says this storm is worse than they predicted. They've issued warnings for the entire coastline." Sarah gently removed her mother's hand. "Dad and Miguel are already out there, Mom. Their radio's broken. You know that. They have no idea what's coming." Her father and younger brother had set out before dawn, heading to their usual fishing grounds about 10 miles offshore. A routine trip they'd made hundreds of times before. They wouldn't expect anything unusual, wouldn't know to return early. "The Coast Guard," her mother began, "is overwhelmed," Sarah finished. "I already called. They're coordinating evacuations further up the coast, where the storm hit first. They said they'd try to get to our area, but..." She left the sentence unfinished. They both knew what it meant. Sarah zipped her weatherproof jacket to her chin. "The Seabird is fast, Mom. I can reach them and be back before the worst hits." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Then I'm coming with you." "No. Someone needs to stay and coordinate with the Coast Guard when they arrive. Give them our coordinates." Sarah pressed a piece of paper with numbers into her mother's hand, then kissed her cheek. "I'll bring them home. I promise." Before her mother could protest further, Sarah was out the door, running down the rain-slick path to the small dock where her boat, a sleek, 16-foot motorboat she'd saved 3 years to buy, was moored. The Seabird wasn't designed for rough weather. As Sarah untied the mooring lines, a rational voice in her head told her this was madness. But a stronger voice, one that pictured her father's withered face and her brother's easy smile, drove her forward. The harbor was nearly deserted, most boats secured or moved inland in anticipation of the storm. As Sarah guided the Seabird through the breakwater and into open water, the first big wave hit, nearly sending her sprawling. She gripped the wheel tighter, adjusting her course to cut through the swells as best she could. Rain reduced visibility to mere yards. The GPS on her phone was her only guide as she pushed the boat to its limits, heading for the fishing grounds where her family would be. 20 minutes out, the storm intensified. Waves now topped 8 feet, tossing the small craft like a toy. Sarah's arms ached from fighting the wheel. Water had found its way into her boots, her gloves, beneath her collar. She was soaked and shivering, but still she pushed forward. "Just a few more miles," she murmured to herself, checking the GPS again. The screen flickered, then went dark as water dripped onto it. Sarah frantically tried to wipe it dry, but the damage was done. Without GPS, without visibility, she was navigating blind. The rational voice screamed louder now. She should turn back while she still could. But which way was back? The storm had disoriented her completely. A massive wave struck the port side, nearly capsizing the Seabird. Sarah was thrown against the wheel, pain blooming in her ribs. As she struggled to right herself, another wave crashed over the bow, flooding the small cabin. The engine sputtered. "No, no, no," Sarah gasped, frantically working the throttle. The engine coughed once, twice, then died. Silence except for the howl of the wind and the crash of waves. The Seabird was now at the mercy of the storm, rising and falling sickeningly with each swell. Without power, without direction, Sarah realized the terrible truth. She was lost at sea in a storm that was still growing. Fear became panic. What had she done? Her attempt to save her family might cost them all their lives. Her mother would lose everyone she loved in a single day. The boat lurched violently as another wave struck. Sarah lost her footing and slammed into the side of the cabin, her head striking metal. Pain exploded behind her eyes, followed by a wave of nausea. She slumped to the floor of the flooding cabin, fighting to stay conscious. This was it then. This was how it ended. Through the haze of pain, a memory surfaced. Her grandmother sitting beside her on a porch swing, Bible open on her lap. "The sea is God's too, Sarah," she'd said. "Never forget that." When the disciples were caught in the storm and feared for their lives, what did Jesus do? He calmed the storm. Young Sarah had answered, "Yes, peace be still," he said, and there was peace. Sarah hadn't prayed in years, not since her grandmother's funeral. Life had been busy, and faith had seemed like something she could return to later, when she had time. Now, as water rose around her ankles and the boat pitched in the merciless sea, she found herself whispering, "Help me, please. I don't want to die out here." The words felt foreign on her lips, but as she continued, they came more naturally. "I don't know if you're listening. I haven't exactly kept in touch, but my dad and Miguel are out there somewhere. They need help. I need help. Please." Another wave crashed over the boat. The cabin was half flooded now. Sarah pulled herself onto the seat, fighting the weight of her waterlogged clothes. Her vision blurred, whether from the head injury or tears, she couldn't tell. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "I'm so afraid. Please don't let this be the end." The storm raged on, indifferent to her pleas. But as she sat there, something strange happened. The panic that had gripped her began to recede, replaced by a calm that made no logical sense, given her situation. She was still in danger. The boat was still taking on water, but the paralyzing fear had lifted. With clearer thoughts came determination. She wasn't dead yet. The boat was damaged, but still afloat. What could she do to improve her chances? Sarah moved methodically now, ignoring her throbbing head and aching ribs. She found the hand pump and began to work, removing water from the cabin. She located the emergency kit and extracted flares, a waterproof flashlight, and a thermal blanket. She secured loose items that had become dangerous projectiles in the pitching boat. As she worked, she continued to talk, sometimes out loud, sometimes in her head, to the God she neglected for so long. Not begging now, but conversing, as if with someone present. Hours passed. The storm showed no signs of abating, but Sarah had done what she could to stabilize her situation. Now came the hardest part, waiting. Exhaustion began to claim her. The adrenaline that had sustained her was fading, leaving bone-deep fatigue in its wake. Her eyelids grew heavy. She fought to stay awake, knowing that sleep could be dangerous, but it was a battle she was losing. Just as consciousness began to slip away, a sound cut through the storm, different from the wind and waves. A mechanical thrum. An engine. Sarah forced her eyes open. Was she hallucinating? She reached for the flares with trembling hands, loaded one into the launcher, and pointed it skyward. The red light blazed against the dark clouds, momentarily illuminating the turbulent sea around her. The sound grew louder, and then, through the curtain of rain, a shape emerged, the distinctive orange hull of a Coast Guard rescue boat, cutting powerfully through the waves toward her. Sarah fired another flare, then collapsed onto the seat, tears streaming down her face. Later, wrapped in dry blankets aboard the Coast Guard vessel, she learned what had happened. Her father and brother, experienced sailors that they were, had recognized the changing weather patterns early. They'd already been heading back to harbor when they'd encountered the Coast Guard boat, responding to her mother's distress call. They'd immediately joined the search for Sarah. "But how did you find me?" Sarah asked the Coast Guard captain, a weathered woman with kind eyes. "In this storm, with no GPS signal." The captain showed her the radar screen. "We were searching the most probable area based on currents and your last known position. But to be honest, we were about to expand the search radius when that happened." She pointed to a break in the clouds, the first in hours, that had created a shaft of sunlight directly over Sarah's position. "Strangest thing I've seen in 20 years of rescue work. Like someone pointing a finger saying, 'Look here.'" Sarah's father, sitting beside her with an arm around her shoulders, squeezed gently. "Your grandmother would have called that providential," he said quietly. Sarah thought about the calm that had come over her in her darkest moment, the clarity that had helped her survive, the shaft of light that had guided her rescuers. Coincidences? Maybe. Or maybe her grandmother had been right all along. The sea was God's too. As the rescue boat made its way back to harbor, through gradually calming waters, Sarah closed her eyes and whispered 2 words she hadn't said in far too long. Thank you. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the reconstructed dock, watching as a priest sprinkled holy water on the bow of the Seabird. The boat had been salvaged and repaired, a project that had occupied Sarah's every free moment since the storm. The small ceremony was her idea, a blessing of the boat before its return to service. Her mother had been surprised but pleased. Her father and brother had exchanged knowing looks but participated willingly. May God bless this vessel and all who sail in her, the priest intoned. May he guide her through calm and storm and return her safely to harbor. Sarah ran her hand along the freshly painted hull. The Seabird had been renamed. In small, elegant letters on the stern was its new name, Grace. Planning another rescue mission? Miguel teased as they walked back up the path toward home. Sarah shook her head, smiling. No, but I am bringing Grandma's Bible on board, just in case. Her brother nodded, understanding in his eyes. Some storms could be seen building on the horizon. Others came without warning. But Sarah had learned that no matter how fierce the tempest, she was never truly alone on the waters. And sometimes, when the clouds parted just so over the harbor at sunset, sending shafts of golden light across the waves, Sarah would pause in whatever she was doing and whisper those same 2 words. Thank you. Dear listener, thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. Many more terrifying, mysterious, and thrilling stories are coming soon. See you again very soon.